You're listening to Love, Guns and Freedom with Luca Zanna on United States.fm network. Here we go, guys. You're listening to Love, Guns and Freedom with Luca Zanna on K-Talks 1340 AM and on United States.fm network. This is the second hour, the hour about guns. Last Sunday, we went through news and some personal rants, and I took a break from guests. I want to bring you the guest because I really believe this show for me, it's a very important role. I don't want to just talk about guns, like what is the latest gun you can buy at the shop. I mean, that's your personal choice. Yeah, at the end of the day, you must have a gun. But for me, the most important weapon is knowledge. First of all, the most important weapon is your brain, your mindset. But the way you're going to find training out there. Because at the end of the day, you can have 1,000 guns sitting in your safe. If you don't have training, it's a waste. Sorry to disappoint you. So I really believe we need to invest in training. And also it's a duty. As a law-abiding citizen, I really believe it's our duty as a gun owners to be proficient, to be safe, and to be the best we can be. Because with freedom comes responsibility. That's the idea. This is also the purpose of the show. So that's why I bring you guests. I brought you different guests that they are really professional, from front side to gun side to, local instructors to international instructors. The idea is to bring you people that I respect and I know that they can offer you something. And I'm not endorsing anybody. The people that I bring you here, they are not guests. They are not sponsors. They are people that I would suggest to a friend at least to take a look, because I believe that everybody has a different, of course, location where you live. You can live in California, you can live maybe in Nevada or other parts of this United States. So I want to get you different opportunities and also different budgets and also different curriculums. So that's the idea. But I don't care where you go. I hope you can do something to pretty much get the best you can be. Now, today I am very excited because I found this gentleman who is what do you want to call it, an expert? He's more than an expert. He's somebody that really saw the action going through in real life, because he's not just an instructor. Like normally we have many instructors coming from several schools that can teach you the basics and also the advanced things, in the heart and science of handgun training or weapons training. This is also a man who served in a Navy, if I well remember, but he can tell you more, and he saw some real life experience about how to defend yourself with small weapons. His name is Omari, and let me get in. Omari Broussard. Are you there, Omari?
I am. How are you?
Very good. First of all, before I go ahead, did I pronounce right your name? I'm very famous to destroy all names
No, you did good. Omari is correct.
Very good, Omari. Please, I would like to, first of all, thank you for the time to be on the show. And I would like to give you the floor to introduce yourself as your professional background, as a professional instructor, and also what is your background before you became an instructor?
Okay, well, for the audience, my name is Omari Broussard. I'm from San Diego, California. Is where I grew up. I have a military background. I did 20 years in the military. I just, in fact, as of this recording, I'm about a couple weeks from my 1-year anniversary from retiring from the Navy. Retired as a Navy chief. I started with firearms. First time I shot a gun, I was 10 years old. I started in martial arts since I was 6. Started professionally teaching in the private sector at about, 2006, 2007 is when I started, getting out in the private sector. I was still in the military, and part-time I was teaching across the country. I got a chance to work with, I learned firearms, and I got certified in the combat-focused shooting program, which was designed and developed by Rob Pincus of ICE Training Company. Been certified with them for almost a decade now. I think I'm at about 9 years with ICE Training Company. Started my own company, 10X Defense, in 2012, which is home-based here in California. But, of course, I travel all over the country and teach. Let's see what else. Still have a heavy combatives background. I got my big break in combatives when I was with Blower Tactical Systems and Tony Blower and the Spear System. I got certified in that in 2008. I was teaching with Blower Tactical for about 2-3 years, and then I went more towards the firearm side. So at 10X Defense, we teach both unarmed and armed, but you'll find a lot of my work is done in the firearms world with the pistol and carbine. Also do some consulting. I have a security degree. I have a security management degree, a bachelor's degree, and I'm about, 2 classes away from finishing my master's degree in performance psychology.
Wow.
So that's kind of a brief.
Very good, very good. And this is exactly why I brought you here, because the purpose of the show is to educate, to share information. And I really believe when somebody make the choice to become a gun owner, and we have a great responsibility. And just because we have a gun doesn't mean that we are we are gunfighters, or we can use it in a correct, safe way, and also, let's say, in the right way. So I think education is very important. Now, you bring that you also, beside your background, that when you were in the Navy, now you have your own firearm institute, if you want to call it like that. And I would like to ask, because there are many choices out there, there are many budgets, there are different curriculums. But every one of us, I think every one of the schools have maybe some specific unicity. And I would like to ask you, what really makes difference from other firearm institute, your ex-defense? What do you offer, and what is exactly something you could, let's share, like the spirit of the essence of your school?
10X Defense came about, and really what makes it unique is, number one, when I teach, all our programs start with the worst-case scenario first. That's kind of our context. I think that's really the unique. There's 2 unique points in any training, in my opinion. One is the instructor, him or herself, right? You have the personality of the instructor and their style that they teach. And then number 2 is the context in which they're teaching, right? So our context is, how do you train for the worst case scenario, right? And by the worst case scenario, I mean something that you didn't know was going to happen, you don't know what's going to happen next, and there's a lethal threat that you may have to deal with. Now, that is 10X Defense. If you can imagine 10X Defense being my interpretation, my style of teaching infused in what Rob Pincus developed as far as counter-ambush training method and combat-focused shooting, right? What else makes this unique is just I would have to say, the way I teach, my personality, because I like to, when I teach, I think of it as more of a coach-athlete relationship versus an instructor-shooter-student relationship. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, every student that comes my way, I focus on not just on the course that they come to take. I focus on, okay, how am I going to get them from novice, beginner, and if I had the opportunity to take them to, the highest level that they can reach, and that's really how I teach, right? So it's not, okay, hey, come train with 10X Defense. We're going to do a course, let's say, on home defense, and that's it. I'm always looking 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, right? Because I look no different than a coach that has a football team, right? We're not worried about game one. We have, in a season, we have 16 games to play, plus the playoffs, plus the Super Bowl, right? So that's kind of my philosophy is, when people come to train with me, I look at it, hey, not just this one course, because one course isn't going to solve the problem, right? It's multiple courses. It's long-term training.
Okay.
So that's 2 things I would say that make 10X Defense unique versus everybody else.
Very good. Now, just because I like always to give the opportunity to the people, of course, to find out more on their own and do their own research. Give the website where people can at least take a look at the classes, at your curriculum, and at different things. What is the website?
The website is http://10x all one word.com.
Perfect.
And
Okay.
they can also Google my name, Omari Broussard, and you'll see 10X Defense pop up. We're also on Facebook, so if you're on the Facebook and do just type in 10X Defense, 10X Defense, all one word, you'll find our Facebook page.
Very good. Now, little bit, because you offer different type of classes, from handgun to carabine, I saw. If you can give, we don't need to go through all the classes, but let's say there are probably, I'm sure, what you call maybe the basic most, let's say the foundation classes that you would suggest to the average gun owner who's really serious in trying to improve himself, into trying to better himself. What are the two classes that you would suggest for somebody that already has been shooting guns but needs some serious training and want to be dedicated himself?
Okay, in that situation, if they've been shooting, I would recommend our 1-day or 2-day combat-focused shooting program, because the combat-focused shooting program that we teach has the fundamentals, right? The principles and core concepts of pretty much all courses that I teach. So that's what I would recommend. At least, a 1-day is good, because in a 1-day course we do about 500 rounds. It's a good 8 hours. Our 2-day is what I recommend for most people, because it's 16 hours. We shoot about 12 rounds of handgun to really just get a good immersion of the course. So that's what I would recommend. And that course is actually taught not just by my company, but there's a number of certified instructors across the country. So I always promote that, hey, if you can't get to me, just do a search for, we actually have a website, combatfocusedshooting.com, and you'll find, my peers and guys that I've mentored and my friends teaching it across the country.
Okay. And just to have an idea, for example, for the 2-day class, what type of budget are we talking about for the fees?
So for normally ranges around $400 to $500, and then you're going to need to bring about 1,200 rounds of ammo, handgun, 3 magazines if you have a double stack, 5 magazines if you have a single stack. We do you're in for a lot of shooting.
Okay. And now questions, I know that you're exactly, I know that you're in San Diego, California. Do you have like your own range facility, or you go through some other ranges?
We actually go through a couple other ranges. Normally, a bulk of our courses are taught at Angeles Shooting Range, which is in the LA area. I'm in Arizona twice, 2 or 3 times a year. Actually, I'm looking at possibly moving to Arizona after I finish school. So Arizona at Ben Avery, I'm there a couple times a year. And then in the Southern California area, Angeles Shooting Range, because Angeles Shooting Range is a great facility.
No, I was thinking about it, you are I'm sorry to say that, in the wrong place for the right type of activity. It's very rough to the politicians and the mindset, it's just starting from what type of gun you can bring, the magazine that you're limited with, there are a lot of different things. Arizona would be probably the heaven, and it is heaven compared to many other parts of the world. But in general, question is, since something I didn't put as a question, but just come out of my mind, since you live in that state, and if it's not too personal, what type of handgun normally you carry or if you carry, or whatever type of gun you train, considering that you have the limitation of the 10 rounds magazine there?
Well, I normally carry a Glock 19. Right, really enjoy the Glock 19. That's probably my go-to. I also have a Smith & Wesson M&P, and then I just purchased a M&P Shield. Those are the main 3. I played with the XD. That'd probably be like my 3rd choice, but I'm a big Glock 19 fan.
Speaking about the Glock 19, I was reading the news. You confirmed it, because sometimes, on the internet you find a lot of things that they're not accurate. I heard that the Navy SEALs used to have like the main gun, the main handgun was the 6.226, and now they went to the Glock 19. Is that true? That you have any other confirmation about?
We're talking about, and I've been asked this question before. There is when you look at military across the board, especially operations, there is no one handgun or one carbine that they use, right? They're going to use whatever's best for whatever job they're doing, right? So I can neither confirm nor deny. I don't know for sure, but you can. If we're talking about a special operations force that works in different environments, right? They're going to require different tools for different jobs. So it could be the SIG. It could be if you look through history, they've used anything from a 22 all the way up to 45s, depending on what the job is. So I don't think when we talk about, and it's funny because these things, everybody's talking it but the Navy SEALs themselves. So we don't know what they're going to use. We don't know what job they're going to be doing.
It's a big marketing thing too. I mean, don't tell me. I understand what you're saying, because at the end of the day, they get every gun they need, every gun they want to have access, they can have access to. But at the same time, like for example, was for the infantry, for the army, was the Beretta for many years, and probably still is. It's some sort of something that the companies behind. Of course, they have a lot of great benefits to reap when they can say, by the way, now the new contract that we have with the Navy, or that's, for example, Glock. I mean, that's a huge, strong marketing point. I mean, honestly, I love the Glock myself very much, and for many reasons. I'm not going to go too much details, but if I had to pick a gun that it's simple, or at least simpler to operate, and under stress, you have less things to worry and less parts to worry. I think the Glock 19, if it's, I don't know, even from the environment, I have to think, I don't know, it's something seems more for the extreme situation, honestly. And I like the 6 too. I mean, they're great, but I don't know. It seems like it would be a good choice too. Now, question is, I would like to ask you a couple basic, more technical questions. For example, the idea is this, of course. We are here on the radio. You're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom. And my guest is Omari Broussard. This is not like a class. We're not going to give you any type of advices. This is not anything like that. If you're driving, keep driving, okay? Don't start to practice with your handgun, even especially if you are in Arizona. You can carry a handgun probably in your car. But it's about give you some ideas of things that can help you out to find more training. For example, the first thing, in home defense handgun, you have this probably the basic home defense handgun, I see. What is the basic advices that you would give to a gun owner regarding this type of topic? I know that there are many things that you touch, but if you had to give a couple things that the people should start to meditate and think in the situation of home defense.
I would say it's more about the strategy versus the tools and the tactics when it comes to home defense. So when I talk about home defense, first thing comes out of my mouth is the 5 things that you need to think about, plan for, and kind of be flexible with. And number 1 is evading, right? So you don't win any badges for chasing down bad guys in your home. So if you can get yourself and your loved ones out safely, that's number 1. Get out of the house. Right. Number 2 is if you can't get out of the house, then you want to get the family mustered together, get everybody barricaded, get everybody armed. And that's, kind of one and the same thing. You want to arm and barricade yourself. And by barricade, that doesn't necessarily mean locking yourself in the closet. What that means is putting obstacles in between you and the danger. Right. And then the next thing is to make contact. Get on the phone, call 911. Make contact with the person in the home if you can, without giving away your position. But if you have a chance to tell the bad guy, hey, you do have a firearm, you're willing to use it, tell them to get out of the house, that's good. Get on the phone with 911. Keep the phone on, because obviously 911 calls are recorded. So even if you drop the phone, you never want to turn the phone off until police arrive. So we have evade, arm, barricade, make contact, and if you must, then you want to respond appropriately, and that is up to using deadly force if necessary, right? But someone taking your TV out of your home doesn't necessarily warrant deadly force, right? So you have to play with that. That's a judgment call, okay?
Exactly.
But those are the 5 things. Now, within those 5 things, you have, arm. All right, well, you can arm yourself with a handgun, you can arm yourself with a bat, you can arm yourself with a book, whatever it takes to deal with the problem or whatever you have accessible. right? It doesn't necessarily mean everybody has to rely on the gun. There's a lot of people that don't own guns for home defense. There's a lot of people that, although they own handguns or own, rifles for the home, they're not accessible. They're stored, but they're not staged. And those are two different things.
Exactly.
Storing and staging.
And
so those are the things that I kind of cover in the home defense deal.
Very good, very good. And also another thing, just my little personal humble experience. Sometimes, everybody, of course, we live in different states with different laws and different realities. But if we live, like, for example, in places like Arizona, of course, that we have also a different type of law on how you can defend yourself. We must really be familiar with also the state laws where we live, because, as you said, first of all, regardless where you live, life is precious. And I always say, we're not here to take a life, but we're here to save a life. And that's the way I look at this as a gun owner. I don't want to kill anybody. I want just to try to prevent people, bad people, to kill good people. That's the idea. So if we can avoid the confrontation, it's great. At the same time, also, we have some realities. Like, for example, I remember when I used to live in California many, many years ago, that you have different set of rules. Like, for example, you must warn first the people, that you must retreat. And, of course, in Arizona, we have a different reality. By the end of the day, if we can avoid that type of, let's say, bloody confrontation, we can give them a way to the rat to get out of the funnel. That would be always better. That would be probably the best thing for everybody. Now, question. Don't you think also that many gun owners, especially that people that they are allowed to carry guns regularly, when you have that gun storage in that safe, is always probably a couple minutes away when somebody's trying to kick in through your door? Because normally the average door, the average home, is pretty much like a piece of paper. I mean, you can kick it in 2 seconds, it goes down. But I always say, for me at least, I always carry the gun with me 24/7 in the house, not in changes. And I think the safest place is always on my hip, on my holster. Don't you think it would be probably maybe a good habit to start to carry your gun? Even if you live like in a state like California, okay, that normally you cannot really conceal carry outside without a permit. But maybe in your home, that's your heaven, that's your castle. Start to put your holster and have that gun available in your house. What do you think? Is something too extreme, maybe?
No, I don't think it's extreme at all. I mean, it's good to have a gun, but it's, when you need it most, you want it, where you can access it. So I think that wherever you spend most of your time in your home, you should have access to your firearm if you need it, right? So whether that's in your bedroom, whether it's, if I'm, even me, if I'm up and about all day and maybe I'm walking around, I'm on my private property, I'll carry my gun. I mean, it doesn't mean no good if it's not
exactly
there, however, I think the staging part and the accessing part, you just want to be cognizant of who has access to it, right? Obviously, you don't want your kids to have access to it, and anybody any unauthorized persons, right? So, if you are going to carry it on you, great. I mean, no harm, no foul there. I do recommend it be concealed. But then we have tools available so that you can have access to your firearm wherever you're at, whether it's a quick-acting safe in the kitchen, whether it's a quick-acting safe. And by quick-acting safe, I mean, a safe where you press a few buttons and open it, like the gun vault or a number of other ones. You can put a safe in your children's room where you can get to it quickly. There's really no limits to where, they even have the safes that are, I forgot what company it is, but basically they build furniture, right? So that you could access your firearm. So, there's really no limit. At the end of the day, it's the homeowner's choice, but as long as they're doing it safely, and by safely I mean, they're preventing small children or, obviously felons from getting to the gun before they do, it's good to figure that out. If I'm spending all my time in the living room and my firearm spends most of its time in my bedroom, right? That's a pretty good distance during an encounter with the bad guy, right?
Exactly. And also, my personal humble experience, I realized that the safest place that I can keep the gun, it's always on me, because at the end of the day, it's in my holster, and I don't forget it. Is nobody can have access unless they knock me down. Okay, that's the idea. And I think also if you have a kids or something like that, it would be probably. And I heard these stories. Even here in Mojave County where we live, like for example, there is just a few days ago there was this lady in Kingman that opened the door, and she was assaulted by three young men. I'm talking about 16, 17, 18 years old young men. I don't want to call them kids anymore. And they did terrible things to her. And I'm not saying that probably she would have saved the day, but at least she would have a chance if she was trained and their gun that was available on her. Because unfortunately, if she had a gun and the gun was, let's say, in the safe or even in the kitchen, too late. They opening the door, you're already out. So I think, it would be something. People sometimes think I'm a little paranoid, but I look at this like a normal lifestyle. But I like to always carry the gun on me everywhere, but especially in the house. That's the place normally I spend most time. Anyway, let's move on. I would like to ask you a couple extra questions. I heard, by the way, a great interview that you did just a few days ago, I think last week, on a newsletter that I'm subscriber, and I forgot the name. If you want to if you know the name, remind it. I'm happy you can spread it out. Anyway, it was a great interview about shooting on the move. I think it's a very important skill that unfortunately it is not covered enough by the average gun owner. When they go to the range, they think, okay, I'm shooting at that target. The target is there, doesn't move. I am not moving, and everything is fine. I hit the target. I won. That's not exactly the way real life goes. They shoot back at you. At the same time, they move, and you're supposed to move. I don't want to go through the whole hour through this very important topic, but in few words, or at least in few phrases, like you can articulate, how can we, first of all, simulate this skill, how to train for this skill at the range, and also any type of basic tips how to do it correctly, how to shoot on the move correctly?
So I did, the podcast was on Modern Combat and Survival.
Yes, I remember
.com. They're an online magazine. And when it comes to shooting on the move, my premise is this. Number one is shooting from a stable platform, which means planted full extension, is the optimal way, right? So when movement comes in, we're talking about when you recognize that there's a threat, getting off the line of attack, right? Moving laterally, at a minimum one body width to the left or right, while presenting the firearm. And then once you get in a position to shoot, stop and shoot. And then once the problem's over, you need to move on. That's probably the most important time to move, right? Is once you recognize the threat. Now, the other thing what we found is what we call shooting in motion, and this is when you have to use your firearm against a contact threat. And a contact threat we define as a person that has either a stick or a knife and they're coming at you, right? And it's at a distance where you're not close enough to the threat to control the arm limb with the knife or the stick, right? So that's what, like within one arm's distance, it would make more sense for me to deal with the threat hands-on than going for my gun to avoid a bad tie.
Okay.
And I'm not far enough to where I can, get off the line of attack, fully extend and shoot. So there's this gray area where if I go for my gun, then I'm looking at a bad tie, right? Or I'm just enough far away. And for this distance is going to change, right? A stick or a broom handle is going to have a different distance than a knife. But we're in this gray area to where we actually have to turn our hips away, start running, and then while presenting our firearm, looking at the threat and shooting. And then once the threat stops, then we can stop, right? So that's where we advocate actual shooting and moving. Otherwise, if you look at the other ways shooting and moving is taught, whether it's walking forward, sideways, or backwards, we look at two things, and these are kind of filters for people, right? So the filter is, does moving necessarily make me safer, right? And what's the effect on our balance of speed and precision while we're moving, right? So those are the two things.
Very good. And
that's kind of how we look at it.
Very good. And some basics, there are the basic, I already talked about this a few weeks ago, but, you are the expert after all. I'd like to ask you the basic technique to be able to shoot on the move. How would you, let's say, your body, how would you set up your body, your feet when you're advancing or when you're retreating? There is any special way that you suggest?
So, like I said, the most important time to move is once you recognize the threat. So, the way to train that is you have to imagine, or if you're on the range, let's say you're on a live fire range, you have a training partner, or even if you're at home, you have a training partner, you have a training, gun, right? Gun that simulates a real one. On the go command, the fire command, the up command, what you first want to do is practice, once you recognize the threat, is moving laterally while you're presenting your gun. So imagine if I'm standing squared up to the target, I hear the go, boom, on the go, I'm going to recognize the threat, and one of the things I'm going to do before I go for the gun, since I'm talking about worst case scenario, is my hands aren't going to go directly to the gun, right? I'm actually going to simulate a startle flinch reaction, which means my hands will come above my waist before it goes to the gun, because that's normally what happens when you're surprised, right? Mm-hmm. And then once I go for my gun, as I'm reaching for my gun, I'm going to start my movement to the left or right. I don't advocate retreating or moving forward because we're dealing with a threat that also has a gun. So retreating from a person that already has a gun doesn't make you any safer, right?
Yes.
So moving backwards, and what I mean by retreating, if somebody's shooting at me and I'm just moving backwards, that doesn't necessarily make me safer. In fact, it could put me in more danger because I can't see what's behind me.
Exactly.
I can only see what's in front of me.
Exactly. Very good. Right. Very good. Yes. And then, of course, the idea also is try to keep your body a little lower, so your center of gravity, you can be on your knees a little bit and try to keep that platform. I used to do a little bit of exercise with a little bit of a plastic cup with a little bit of water on my gun, especially if you have a gun like a Glock. Normally you can do that, and be able to walk in some sort of let's say fighting position, that and the glass is supposed to be up. That was something for me, was kind of fun, and it helped me out a lot, honestly, when I was doing then range time. Anyway, just some ideas, guys. The idea is that start to think that real world is not going to be shooting at the paper target and you're going to be there sitting and waiting and looking at the stars. The point is the real world is going to be running, trying to escape. So I hope we can all try to find training in simulating the real situations that hopefully we're never going to face. That's pretty much why I want to talk about this. Because I think it's very important when people feel too much cocky or too confident, they think they know something, that's where you're going to get hurt. That's where you go into reality check that probably you weren't that prepared, So that's my goal, is try to always find new ways we can improve. Now, back to the basic ideas of some training ideas. First of all, what is the most important skill for you, according to your curriculum and your experience, that in a civilian gun owner we should have for self-defense situation? Regardless what type of weapon do we have, handgun, shotgun, doesn't matter. It must be a skill that for you suggest we need to focus on.
I think the most important skill, and without going into, I think what I think a lot of people lack the difference between an ability and a skill, so understanding the two. An ability being what you bring to the table naturally, right? And then the skill being something that you have to be taught, and there's different types of skills. So to me, the most important skill is being able to go from reaction mode to response mode, right? So your body, especially during the worst case scenario, your body does things automatically, right? We're going to automatically focus on the target. We're going to automatically lower our center of gravity. If we're surprised, our hands will come automatically to the place where it's going to protect our core and our head first before it goes to our tool. So going from that, right, to transitioning to getting our gun into a place where we can actually use it, right? I think that's the most important skill, because if you look at real world video, that's where everybody gets hung up, right? Including police officers. It's from and I'm sorry, you might have to bleep this out. It's going from the to okay, now I got to get to work, right? And that's even in unarmed, right? Going from okay, please, I don't want to fight, and blah, 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 to, okay, now I got to get work done. That's the most important skill, because you can be the greatest shooter in the world, grandmaster, right? But if you never get out of the reaction stage into the response stage, I don't care how good you are.
Exactly. And that's why I think also the mindset must be already there, and we must already have made our own decisions, because otherwise, if we're still thinking about what we're going to do in that moment, and we didn't make our decisions previously, it's going to be always a second too late just to think about it. What do you think about the color of awareness that probably was, I think Colonel Cooper was the first one to put them together in that scientific way. Do you talk about this type of awareness, different stages of awareness during your classes, your curriculum?
No, I don't. And here's why. I think that there's a lot of things that were created. I mean, there's some timeless principles over time, but I think we've evolved since then, right? So Rob Pink, it's online. I can send you the link. But he did an article on the evolution of the OODA loop, and instead of the colors of awareness in the OODA loop, what he talks about is observe, react, recognize, and respond.
Okay.
Right?
Interesting.
So, and then the other half of that is observe, react, improvise. And that's basically how we go throughout life, right? I don't know. I think a lot of people use the color codes as a crutch. Well, I was in white, or I always want to be in a certain color code, right? I always want to be orange, right? And the fact of the matter is, you're going to be whatever you are at the moment right before the bad guy attacks you, right? So I'm going to be focused. If I'm out with my kid, right, I have 6 kids, right? So if I'm out with one of my kids and we're getting ice cream, and I'm in an ice cream shop, and at the moment right before the attack happens, I'm going to be focused on what kind of ice cream my daughter wants or my son wants. I don't care about anything else. I'm not going to be looking around, looking over my shoulder while I'm trying to choose ice cream. But when that happens, I need to recognize and I need to respond, right? And that comes through training. Recognition comes through training. So the more you train, the more you'll be able to recognize when things are not in its proper place, right?
Okay, makes sense, yeah.
The less you train, then you put yourself in a position to always improvise. So without training, I'm going to have improvisation. With training, I'm going to be more likely to recognize the problem before it happens or as it's happening.
I understand. Interesting.
Right?
That's a good thing.
So now that frees me from whatever color code I'm in, right? It's just, okay, I'm living life. And when something does happen, because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be able to prepare. And a lot of these theories predicates us on preparedness, and you're not going to be prepared for everything. So once you accept the fact that I'm not going to be prepared for everything, however, the more I train, the quicker I can recognize things and the quicker I can respond. Otherwise, you'll be walking around, you'll never walk forward, because you'll always be looking around.
Exactly. That's interesting, because many curriculums out there, they focus a lot on the different type of color awareness. And this is the first time. And I think there is a lot of good thinking what you just said, because sometimes we focus too much on training just of the awareness. I think it's very important. But at the same time, we don't pay enough attention in training in the moment that we're going to get caught without that type of awareness previously. So it's interesting. I'm glad I asked you that. I was planning to ask you that, but something that came out probably out of my mind right now. Great. Now listen, something personal that you don't have to answer, but I always like to ask that, especially since you're a guy that you didn't just do the instructor as a civilian, but you wore a uniform. I'm sure you went through some situation that probably you had to face some violent realities. In your line of business, did you ever being shot, or did you ever had to shoot somebody? Just curious.
No, I haven't, right? And I tell people all the time, I've met with violence way before I got in the military, or, even in the military, I've worked in a law enforcement capacity. I've done some reserve time as a civilian law enforcement. Everything that happened to me violence-wise, or that I saw, or that, I witnessed, was way before I got in the military. I grew up in, the 80s in San Diego. Gang violence was very prevalent. Crack was very prevalent back then. So, a lot of the training that I have now was to deal with that. I got involved in training because, I spent a big part of my childhood, in this environment that if you didn't know how to take care of yourself, you were pretty much a victim, right? There were those that did and those that were victimized by it.
Yeah.
So when I got in the military, one of my biggest things, and I was raised by some guys that were, Vietnam vets, and they always told me, they said, whatever situation you get in, if you have to shoot, you screwed up along the way.
Exactly.
Right? Or
That's
if
true.
you get shot, you screwed up along the way. You want to be able to deal with problems without, because you can't collect intel from a dead guy.
Exactly.
Right?
That's true.
And as far as the training community as a whole, since we're talking about educating, I like to tell people, the top 1% of the military and law enforcement are involved in jobs where the potential of getting shot at or doing the shooting is very low. Top 1%, right? Now, the 0.1% of that 1% are the ones that actually go do that and do those type of missions for a living. And even then, only 0.1% of them actually get to do it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right? So it's very rare to find that combination.
I always ask that just for a reason, not because I always hope to find, of course, that nobody had to go through that type of experience. But sometimes, it's something that people unfortunately idealize through movies or the pop culture. They think, oh, great, you had to shoot somebody. That's a very, I think no matter if you're into the right, if you're a good person, if you're not a scumbag and you're not a psychopath, even if we have to shoot somebody because you had no other choice, I think it's always going to be a scar that's going to stay with you, because after all, it's always another human being. And after all, you always said, maybe I could have avoided that. So, and for me, it's almost a psychological experience that I like to ask to people that to do that type of situation. And I'm not saying that I say, oh, well, you have to do it. You do what you have to do. Sometimes, since I never had to go through that, and I always try to ask, how do you feel after all these years? I have, for example, here people like Chuck, my brain, my gosh, not Chuck Norris, help me out. Oh my gosh. Anyway, one of my guests, probably you know him. It's one of the famous gun instructors, especially from the 70s, 80s, and he's a special forces guy. He's been my guest, and he has his own school too. And anyway, to make story short, and this guy is also a Vietnam vet, okay? So, and he was shot a few times, and he had to shoot some other times. And, I talked to him. Chuck Taylor. You ever heard about Chuck Taylor? Chuck Taylor, check it out. He's also on my website, Love, Guns, and Freedom. Anyway, he's a very interesting guy. He's a former Special Forces, and he created like this curriculum through the years of the Combat Master was the first one. But regardless, the guy that has to face some real shooting. And I realized that even in the moment that he came back home and he was happy, he still has something that he wishes probably he didn't have to do. And that's why, I hope that the people listening to the show understand more and more that we are not here to shoot anybody. We try to avoid the shooting, and that's where we win. I think you're right. When you said the real, you failed, something you did wrong through the, if I had to go to the point that I had to pull the gun out, means I missed something before. I could have avoided that probably. I could have done something better probably, but that's the bottom line. Now, back to the little bit of idea, techniques, and training ideas. I like very much when you talk about counter-ambush strategies for a civilian world. How to mentally prepare for an ambush, ? What to do to avoid one. We're not gonna have the time to do it all, but let's say you ambush in the real civilian world, okay? I'm not talking about in the forest or in the military, some situation like in Vietnam or whatever. like maybe you're driving your car and they try to carjack you. What is the mindset? What would be the tip you would say to the civilian person that wants to prepare to react to an ambush?
So my biggest thing is, like I said, it goes back to what I said earlier as far as going from recognition, understanding that there's going to be natural body's reactions, right? That's number one. Understand that you're going to possibly your hands are going to come up. You're going to, your heart's going to start beating. All these things that happen naturally are going to happen. We have to accept that, right? Number two is we got to get into action as quick as possible, whatever that action is going to be. And for everybody, it's going to be different, right? But we have to understand in our head that, okay, I accept that my body is going to do some things. I'm going to use those things to my advantage and deal with the problem, right? So number three for me is when we look at violence, right, I believe it's the highest form of human communication, right? Because that's really what it is. It's communicating.
Yeah.
Now, in that highest form of communication, right, the stakes are high. You got to look at it as a problem that needs to be solved, right? So it's no different than, okay, what's 1 + 1? 1 + 1 = 2, right? So when we get into these situations, we want to be able to, we want to understand that this is a problem that needs to be solved, because I think people get hung up out of the emotion of it, the psychological aspects of it, instead of, okay, this is a problem we need to deal with. And then however you decide to deal with that problem, at that point in time, once it's over, that's how you dealt with it, right? So a lot of times as trainers, we talk about what to do before or what to do during, but a lot of times we fail to help people understand, okay, here's what's going to happen after. Here's what could happen after, right? And a lot of people can suffer long-term psychological damage because they don't necessarily look at how the way they solve the problem as the way that they solve the problem.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I don't want to be too esoteric.
No, I understand. And I remember, we are also, for the listeners out there, sometimes, I have people calling me while they're driving, and he said, can you repeat what he just said? Focus on driving, and this is just something to put in your mind, things that we may not know, and to find out more about it. Please say one more time your website, because I know that also you have a Facebook page. Maybe people can ask you questions after if they have any type of questions. Go ahead, please. Remind your website.
Absolutely. 10xdefense.com. That's all one word, 10xdefense.com. Same thing, same username on Facebook. And people can reach out to me to my normal Omari Broussard Facebook page. I'm pretty open with that. Just if you have questions, especially, I love answering questions. They can shoot me a message there.
Okay, listen. Speaking about dry practice, speaking about shooting, dry practice training, do you train in that type of environment? Do you do dry practice training? And if you do you have any special routine, any special drills that you do for your regular training?
For dry practice, I'm a big component of skill development in the environment. So I don't do a lot of dry practice with touching and pressing the trigger, right? And the reason I do very little of that is just because that if I'm using my firearm and I'm on the range and I press the trigger and the gun goes click, well, I want to automate the process of getting that gun back up and running, because normally that represents a problem in live fire, right? So for dry practice, I really found myself working on presentation of the firearm from concealed, from different positions. So if you have a rubber training gun, right, or even a SIRT pistol, right, that denotes a different context, then I find I do more dry practice in the handling of the firearm in different positions. Okay. Because not all the time will I end up standing.
Okay, exactly. Very good.
Right, so what I mean is, I'm presenting from the seated position, right? So right now I'm seated in my chair, so if a threat was, to my left or right, could I get my gun in the shooting position from the seated position?
Very good.
Right, so and I'll do that with a training gun. That's where I find myself doing the most dry practice.
Very good. And talking about carry day, everybody carries their gun, but sometimes I see when I go around, especially here in Arizona, that people still can carry open carry. I don't see many spare magazines. Call me, I don't know, paranoid, but I always like to have at least a couple of spare magazines. Normally, what I also carry at the range. Do you carry any spare magazine when you carry your gun?
Yeah, I have a military background, so one is none, two is one.
Okay.
Right? I was a communicator in the military, and we carry radios out in the field. You never carried one battery.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I'm an advocate. At least one extra one.
Yes.
And it's why not?
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things. Why not? And it's not so much that. Once again, and I want to be clear with this, it's not so much that you plan on emptying 2 magazines into a bad guy or you plan on fighting a war, right? It's I have to plan for if the magazine that I have inserted in the gun, what if it goes bad? What if I have a malfunction? Well, one of my processes for dealing malfunction is to get a fresh magazine instead of trying to figure out what's wrong with the first one, right? Have a fresh magazine ready to go. So that's one of the reasons why, I advocate people carrying an extra magazine.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost you anything.
Exactly. Sometimes people, I'm not going to try to tell what to do, but the idea is this. So the moment that we made a decision to carry a weapon and we decide that we want to engage evil with lethal force, at that point, all the rules are gone. They will try to kill you no matter what. And what if, why you limit yourself maybe to 6 rounds if you have a little revolver, or even 17 rounds if you have a Glock 17 or similar? The point, for example, I remember there was a story I heard when I was still living in California years ago when I was a fresh immigrant. And it really shocked me. It was this police officer off duty. And he went to the grocery store, I guess, or to the convenience store with his little baby, a little kid. He has probably like a few years old, 4 or 5 years old. And in the middle of this situation, there was a robbery, okay? And this police officer off duty, he had with him just a little revolver, probably a 38, with 5 or 6 rounds. I forgot exactly. The point is, he started to engage 3 bad people. They were having long arms, long weapons, like shotgun or similar, and the moment that you can go through 6 rounds very quickly, and that's exactly what happened. And then he found himself behind the car with an unloaded weapon, with his little baby that unfortunately was there, and for me, as much as I want to give him a good heart to try to stop evil, I think probably the first thing he should have taken care of was his baby. But more important, he didn't consider that he didn't have enough backup ammunition. So the bad guys, what happened? When they realized that he was without ammo, they just went to him and they shot in the face the baby. That was something about 15 years ago or so. I remember the story when I just came here. And I don't know if you've heard, but that day I said, oh my gosh, we really need to bring backup ammo no matter where we are if we decide to bring the gun with us. Listen, I want to give you the floor because, I always ask questions, but probably maybe you have some questions. Maybe you want to say something that we didn't touch. So whatever topic you want to talk about it, I give you the floor, Omari.
Here's the biggest thing for me now, and I've been advocating this whenever I teach, is there's a significant amount of increase of firearms being purchased, right? However, I don't see a significant increase in the amount of people taking training. And I think both go hand in hand, depending on what type of firearms owner you are, right? So if you're a gun owner that buys guns for collection, cool. But if you're a gun owner that buys guns for self-defense, whether it's home defense, whether it's concealed carry, then I believe, attached with the gun should be the investment in training, and not just one training course, but kind of a training plan that you have throughout the year. The season is coming up. The training season around the country seems to start up in the springtime and kind of end in the wintertime. So I just want to advocate people to get out there and train, and not just and do different types of training, right? So we have training like basic medical training, right? How do you plug a gunshot wound? Because you may, in fact, have to fix yourself, right? In the military, we always said, self-aid, then buddy aid, but you always deal with the firefight first. So there's, simple medical training out there. There is training in the aftermath of shooting. So I know Masada, you has the Mag 20 program, which talks about the law. I mean, a lot of people are advocating for the Second Amendment. A lot of people are advocating for gun rights, but a lot of people don't have no idea what the laws of their state is on handguns, right?
Exactly.
Or what laws you got to think about after a shooting. Because bottom line, even if it's a good shoot, if the cops walk up and only one party is able to talk, somebody has to be the suspect.
Exactly.
If the other person's dead, right? So if you're uneducated in what the police are going to do when they show up to a shooting, right, then that can put you in you can go from hero to criminal real quick, just from the lack of knowledge, right? So I want to advocate people to get out there and train and have an actual solid training program, and lastly, document your training. Whether it's in the logbook, I have logbooks going back to like 99 from,
Wow.
I mean, even when I was doing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I keep every piece of training that deals with personal defense, I have documented, right? So I think that's important too, to document your training. It's no different than fitness, right? If I
Yes.
want to gauge and actually have data on where I've improved or how I can further improve, then me just going out and spending money on training is not going to help. Me collecting certificates is not going to help. It's like, what did I learn? What skills did I develop? What skills do I need to improve? So I just want people to be more proactive in training. And, for those that reach a point in training where, they actually have a message to give and they want to help, other people train, I think becoming an instructor is a good thing, for those that can teach well and, teach solid programs that are based on not just experience, right? I think training needs to be more based on the data and the science behind it, right? I'm not an advocate of just because, I tell people all the time, don't just train with me because I have 20 years of experience in the military. That's the wrong reason to train with me. Train with me because you know that, I use a blend of my experience and data and good teaching methods to transfer information, because regardless of how good I am, how good I was or how good I am in my fight has nothing to do with you. What does have something to do is how I transfer that knowledge to you
Exactly.
to help you in your fight and make you better,
Very-
right? So that's pretty much all I have, man. I hope that helps your audience. I hope
Perfect,
that gives
perfect.
value to your audience.
Omari, I want to thank you again, and I appreciate your time. And guys, you're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom. We look at Zanna, and that was Omari Broussard. Thank you, Omari. Keep us posted, please, when you do your next class in Arizona. I would like to help you out to promote it, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, don't go away. Ready for our number 3. We're going to talk about love and more information and more news.